Well, here we are. Just give a moment for that to start up because I am trying a new OBS setup. Well, here we are. Oh, and now I'm echoing. Just give a moment for that to start up because I am trying. I'm actually not echoing, but anywho, welcome, welcome everyone, one and all. Well, this stuff actually seems to be working, which is great. So, I have been out of action for quite a bit, and I wanted to let everyone know what's what's in the future for this channel. So, of course, I'm on to second year law school now. I'm no longer the first year law student. I provide perspectives on legal topics, but now as a second year law student up here in Canada. I'm hoping to do a lot more videos on trials and cases that are running in our courts. One of my courses actually has a component where I have to either virtually or in person attend court and observe proceedings. So I'm going to get a schedule from that prof on upcoming cases, and hopefully I can do some videos on them. There's nothing much interesting upcoming. We just don't have as many guns here in Canada. And that means we don't have any interesting crimes. We don't have Alex Murdaugh like trials. Tends to be quite muted, as one would say. So, I've got up on the screen right now. The other thing I wanted to talk about today was an ongoing provincial election going on in Manitoba. But I won't go there right this second. I'm too lazy to scene switch, and no one wants to see my mug on full screen anyway, so I'll just leave this up here for a moment. But that's the update. Right now the goal is to get to those 1,000 subscribers to monetize this channel, get it ready for a lot more activity that I'm going to be doing this fall. Hopefully I can get on. I'll do some live streams, some pre-recorded video. Like I said, I'm still working with what's going on here in my studio setup, but yeah. Hang out with people in the live chat. One of those casual. This is a very casual stream. I got something I want to talk about a little bit later, but right now I'm spitballing here because it's been a long time. Long time since I've been on camera on this channel. I'm at 296 subscribers right now. So the road to 1,000 continues. Oh, by the way, this ain't alcohol. It's just a thing of water. It's a little early for alcohol right now. Although, I always keep a bottle of Highland Park handy. always keep a bottle of Highland Park handy. So the format of legal. Actually, let's before we jump into the election stuff. Hmm. Let's see here. What am I looking for? Actually. Hmm. So, I jumped into the Alberta Rules of Court. Now, the Rules of Court, they apply to council and the people they represent. There are a lot of rules about how you're supposed to conduct yourself in court. The procedure, all that stuff. Anyways, the only reason I wanted to jump into something on Canley. Let's see, no. Just jump into a case in Canley. I'm not aware of any, like I said, any high profile cases going on right now. I know there's been a lot of people following the Freedom Convoy. Oh, this is interesting. So this was the person who is suing the organizers of the Freedom Convoy. And this was taking place. Well, there you go. So the clerk register opens with oi, oi, oi. Interesting, interesting. I've just first time seeing this, so um I have a whole lot of commentary on it, but let's see if we can find anything interesting. This is a transcript of a hearing. We'll see. What's the motion before the courts? So this took place a year and a half ago. So I think I saw February. Yeah. Yeah, February 7th of 2022. This was in the Ontario Superior Court. Um, and would filed a civil claim against the organizers of the Freedom Convoy. For context, and for anyone who doesn't know, the Freedom Convoy was a mass protest against COVID restrictions and lockdowns in the dark days of I think it was 2022 is when this happened. Wasn't that long ago. It was very recent. As far as controversial things go in this country. But uh, a convoy of semi trucks drove into downtown Ottawa and then just dropped the airlines and parked their trucks right on the roads, causing this huge blockade, paralyzing downtown Ottawa, and which is where our Parliament buildings are located. So obviously that was a protest against our government at the time, led by Justin Trudeau. Um, for my American listeners, it's important to remind everyone that we have a slightly different system of governance. So we have prime ministers, not a president, and our prime minister is an elected official, also who sits in our legislature. So our the head of our executive branch also can vote on our laws. So that's unlike the U.S., where the president doesn't vote in Congress or the Senate. Um, and that would be of course, our head of state is the governor general, who represents the queen in our constitutional monarchy. But that is a very limited, it's mostly a ceremonial position. Our prime minister leads the country for all intents and purposes. But they are a member of the legislature, and so we don't have like a separate like White House and Congress. Those are the same building, and it's called our Parliament. Our Parliament building, and so that Parliament building is located right downtown Ottawa, along a main thoroughfare. And so what the trucker convoy did was drive up to that. Drive up to the Parliament buildings and block the roads for, I think it was like 2 weeks. So I believe Lee here is an Ottawa resident who had filed a lawsuit against the organizers of the Freedom Convoy. There's some familiar names here you might have seen before. I'm just going to turn off the highlighting. It's a little bit annoying. Chris Barber is certainly one of the more vocal members of this protest. Tamara Litch and Patrick King are, I believe, undergoing their criminal, or no, it's Chris Barber and Tamara Litch are undergoing their criminal trial right now in Ottawa. Which is what I was hoping to find a couple of motions on, but I didn't see anything. So so apparently someone used a racial slur in the chat. So this was a in-person court session. Some parties are present in court, while others are hearing remotely from different locations. So apparently someone put a racial slur in the chat window. And yeah, apparently the judge wants to hold the person who used the slur in contempt of court. God, that'd be an interesting one to follow up on. What are you in for? Well, apparently I dropped a racial slur in the Zoom chat of court. Oh. Now, I mean, okay, before you take that out of context as well, using the racial slur is not in and of itself illegal. But it is disrupting the court proceeding. And that is the authority that the judge is able to hold someone in contempt or ask the Crown to begin criminal proceedings. The Crown is simply our shorthand for the state. So in the U.S., when there are when there are criminal proceedings, it's usually the state versus the state versus someone. When you sue the state in a civil suit, you sue the attorney general. So those are in Canada. We use the Crown instead of the state, and so criminal proceedings, we use the abbreviation R, which stands for Rex or Regina. Regina, obviously the queen, the Latin words for king and queen. So now it would be Rex because the king, long live the king. But we just shorten it to R. And so you'll find case citations in the criminal context begin with R versus the accused party. And so the judge is saying that the lawyers representing the Crown can take a deeper look into this and decide if... now, we have the same discretion, right? We have a very similar legal system, and the Crown performs almost the exact same role that the state does. They have prosecutorial discretion. And the difference is that our positions are not elected. They're appointed. But yeah, there's prosecutorial discretion, and that discretion can be used to see if the person who dropped the slur in the chat could be brought before the court and charged with disrupting the proceedings. But yeah, it's not actually illegal to say a racial slur in Canada. It is illegal to... it is definitely illegal to disrupt a court proceeding. Okay. And like I said, I'm just seeing this the first time, just like you guys, so I'm just kind of quickly reading through, see if there's anything interesting. There is a lot of talking over each other here, I can see. That's the reality, especially if you're calling in remotely. You just don't get to see the same, I guess the visual cue that someone is about to stop talking and then someone starts talking, or that someone wants to start talking. And so I've seen a lot of like these ellipses usually mean that someone has talked over someone else, and the poor court reporter or the court recorder, they have to. There's only one of them, and so they have to. They have to go through all of this stuff, and when people start talking over each other, I'm sure the transcript gets a little sloppy there because they have to write who's talking and what they said, and of course there's these back and forths, which I'm sure if you watch the recording, like these people are talking pretty fast, right? We got one of the lawyers, I believe Mr. Champ is representing. Where does it say? Yeah, Mr. Champ's representing the plaintiff in this, and then reply submission, reasons for decision. Yeah, let's go down to page 60 and see what actually happened. I guess these pages aren't numbered, but matter is adjourned. Oh, so the lawyer actually answers his phone in the middle of court. That's always good. And we got some audio issues here. Oh, that poor court reporter. And we got tech issues. Oh, this is fun. I could honestly, I could do tech issues in court all day long as a topic. Uh, I would love talking about that kind of stuff. Watching boomers just fumble through laptops and projectors and emails. But that looks like that's what's happening here as we're trying to get stuff back and forth. Um, hmm. Yeah, so the matter was just put off to another day. I think there was a lot of back and forth about um, what papers and filings had to go. So, anyways, I'm not gonna spend too long on this. Let's see here. Yeah, there's papers going back and forth, and people are not people didn't get things, and people are like, I didn't receive this thing. Uh, these boomers. Okay. Oh, okay. This was the motion seeking injunction for the people um blowing their horns. So allegedly, during the Freedom Convoy, with all the semi trucks parked in downtown, allegedly they were blowing their air horns all night long. And of course, anyone who's been around semi trucks knows that those horns are not quiet. They're not like car horns. They're actually very loud. They carry for quite a distance. Um, okay. And so this was adjourned. So there's no ruling on this, but this was the matter that was brought before the court was to seek an injunction to prevent the trucks from blowing their air horns after a certain hour. Um, Now most cities have a bylaw against that kind of stuff, but the city obviously wasn't enforcing it, and so this person went to court to try and get that injunction. And an injunction is just simply a court order saying, "Hey, stop doing this thing." Um, Injunctions are sought to prevent disruptive behavior from continuing. Anyone who breaks the injunction, who continues the disruptive behavior, can be held in contempt of court for violating the injunction. So that's what those are. They tend to be like the hearing to get an injunction can be on an emergency basis. You can typically get those very quickly, depending on the seriousness of the matter. But anyways, that's that's all I wanted to cover for. Like I said, we went a little on a bit of a tangent. But just looking over at the other screen here, monitoring what's going on. But that's all I got for. I think we've spent enough time in Canley. So let's talk Manitoba elections. So Manitoba is one of the Western Canadian provinces, the most eastern of the Western Canadian provinces. It's one of our prairie provinces. It sits right on a transition zone between Northern Ontario's Canadian Shield geography and then the endless stretch of flat prairie that is Western Canada. So, um, yeah, Manitoba sits north of Fargo on the Red River. So if you were, Yeah, if you were to drive north of Fargo, you'd end up on the Manitoba border with the U.S. Uh, and so yeah, it's kind of like when Manitoba's kind of like Minnesota in that way. It's kind of a transition between the more northern boreal forest zone and the endless farm zones of the plains. Manitoba's biggest city is Winnipeg. It's pretty much the only big city in Manitoba. And like many other Canadian cities, it's actually pretty close to the American border. I think it's less than 100 miles away from the US border. So they're having a what you guys in these states would call a state election. And so they're electing their premier, which would be the equivalent of a governor, along with the provincial legislature. And so you're looking at a projection. It's kind of similar to what's it called? Was it 538 or 578? I forget. There's a Nate Silver project down in the States that does presidential polling. I could probably pull it up. Five. Oops. Uh, 538. Oh, it's the same. Okay, yeah. 538. Oh, boy. So, 338 is similar to 538 in that it is a poll aggregator. And let's dive a little deeper into that. Poll aggregators look at a summary of opinion polls on the outcome of an election. I don't see any listed here. Let's go. Here we go. Manitoba polls. Here we go. And so this is what they create these fancy graphics from. And so 538 does something very similar. If we can go. Interesting article. So there's some commentary here, but this is also a polling site. Here we go. And there you go. So same thing. Take a little effort to find it, but same thing. We have, different polls. Oh boy, look at that. And of course, so you've got the actual firm that conducts the polling. The sample size is listed here. The sponsor, which you'll often notice, are media companies, newspapers, news websites, news channels will often sponsor these polls because they want to know what the people are thinking about, and that gives them some news to report on. Yeah, you'll find that these are dominated by YouGov. I imagine this is probably one of the leading polling firms in the States. You can. Yeah, there's. Yeah, anyways, let's not get too deep into this, but. Oh, actually, let's check in on this for a second. You know what? I didn't plan on talking about the primaries, but why not? Let's talk about the primaries. So here we are, looking. I love that there's been a small dip once those indictments have been read, and now he's trending upwards. Everyone else is going down. I didn't realize Christie was in a race. It's really interesting that when DeSantis was, I forget which day DeSantis officially announced he was going to enter the presidential race, the Republican primary. But you can see until he started talking, he actually was pretty close with Trump, and then he starts talking, and people see more of him, and then he just talks himself out. Boy, what a time to be alive! Because there has never been, in my mind, anyways, a leader quite like Donald Trump, and his enigma is fun to watch. Now, I analyze polls. This is my background. This is what I do in politics. And you've seen my commentary. I did the I was a guest on Nick Rekieta's stream, Rekieta Law, for the U.S. midterms in 2022 and the U.S. presidential election in 2020. These are I love doing this type of analytical work on opinion polls, but sometimes you just have to pause and admire a force that takes these polls and just turns them on their head. For example, the 2016 U.S. presidential election, where every poll said Hillary was going to win. She was going to cakewalk it, win. She was going to win. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that Hillary was going to be the president. So, then the election night happened. And it didn't go quite according to plan. And Donald Trump becomes president. And so the Democrat Party says, well, we can't have that happen again. Then COVID hits. Then the mail-in ballot thing. And now we're in our first post-COVID election. More people come out to vote in person now. The mail-in ballots are starting to drop off, but they're still much higher than pre-COVID. And of course, there is this phenomenon of ballot harvesting, which I think I've talked about it on this channel before. If not, I think I talked about it on Rekieta's channel before in the midterms. But ballot harvesting is the practice of sending partisan operatives to people's houses to help them fill out their mail-in ballot. Now, normally when you vote, you go behind a privacy screen, you mark your ballot, you drop it in the machine, or you put it in a box. Each state has a different procedure. The machines can tabulate automatically, or you can actually just physically go up to the machine screen and choose electronically, and it will record your vote. Coming from a technology background, I've always had issues with the fully automated voting system. I'm not opposed to electronic tabulation, but I want the paper backup. And so in Canada, we use electronic tabulation, where you fill out a paper ballot. It would be similar to those Scantrons. I don't know if anyone remembers when they were in college or perhaps high school and you did exams. And you had to shade in bubbles, and then they'd feed the paper into a machine. It would read your answers. Scantrons, I think they were called. But yeah, it runs on that similar principle. It is, you fill in your ballot in a particular way. There's all sorts of writing on the ballot says, fill it in this way, don't fill it in, incorrectly. And the machine reads your ballot. But then it also stores the ballot in a secure box. So if the machine readout looks suspicious or a recount is required, they open up the secure box and they can count the paper. They can hand count the paper ballots as a backup. So I'm not opposed to that. I like the paper backup, but also understand that we need the speed of being able to count quickly. We just, that's the world we live in right now. Everyone's born with ADHD, and we can't wait more than an hour for election results. And hand counting is actually really hard to do. They never get it right. Every time there's a recount, you always get a different number. Um, when you deal with thousands and thousands of ballots, it's inevitable. You'll make one or two mistakes. And if the if the person who wins the vote is only ahead by maybe a dozen votes, those mistakes matter. That's why there's often an automatic recount if the results of the two front runners is really close. And then in Canada, we don't do runoff elections at all. So if you don't get 50 plus 1, you can end up in a situation where you're in a minority government, because we don't have just a two-party system. We have 3 main parties, but then there's a bunch of smaller other parties too. And so you can have the most seats with 40% of the seats, and the other two parties split the remaining seats amongst themselves and got 30% each. So you have more than any other single party, but if they all work together and vote against you, they'll defeat you. And so in that system, you have what's called the plurality. You formed a government, you have the most seats, but it is a government that requires you to negotiate with the other parties so that they will vote with you on legislation. Otherwise, if they all vote against you and work together, you get defeated, your bills get defeated, and if you lose a confidence motion, a new election is called. So the name for that is a minority government. Justin Trudeau is in a minority government right now. If all of the other parties were to vote against him, all his bills in our parliament would get defeated. However, his philosophy closely aligns with our third place party, the New Democrat Party, and they have what's called a supply. What is it called? A supply and not supply and demand. It's a supply and confidence, I think it's called, agreement, where they say the NDP gets to say, the New Democrat Party leader gets to say, here's our priorities. We want you to do this, this, and this, and this. And Trudeau says, all right, I'll do that, that, and that, and then you vote with me on all our bills. And that's how our parliament's been running for the last couple of years. So, yeah, I'll get into that possibility and breakdown in just a second. I'm just gonna grab a quick drink here. That's good. So, let's explain what goes into this type of polling before I switch back over to the Manitoba election. So, I'm sure a lot of people understand that they don't call every single person, and that this is the summation of that. I think most people understand that this is a representative sample. They call however many thousands of people, which to go back, is the sample size here. But they also collect demographic information about who they talk to. Age, education, where you live. Because these companies maintain demographic profiles of, I think, every county in the States, if not most major counties anyways. So, and the formula used to derive the result from the sample size is usually a trade secret in these companies. So each one does it. Their formula is highly secretive. They're very protective of it, and it's different from company to company, but mostly similar. you're going to run the same statistical analysis if you are a stats person and this is really what you're into. I don't know. I don't know how you do it. It's a special type of brain that can come up with that formula. But to keep it simple, the sample size is extrapolated based on the demographic profile of the sample size versus the demographic profile of the jurisdiction. So this is a national survey, so it's representative of the entirety of the United States, which means it's going to sample heavily in the coasts, California, and then down the northeast coast especially. It's going to have a heavy sample size of New Yorkers and Californians. I don't know how you refer to people from Los Angeles, but yes, the two biggest cities. You're also going to find, I think, the Dallas and Chicago are the next biggest city. No, Houston. Sorry, not Dallas. Houston and Chicago are the next biggest cities in the U.S. So you're going to find heavy samples from those big cities because there's just so many people. So once they get a dozen or so people answering from the city, they say, okay, well, that's the demographic profile of that city. I can extrapolate the rest of the city based on the sample size. So when you see the sample size of 1,000, and then you realize that it represents the 300 million plus people in the entirety of the country, you can see why these things sometimes get it wrong. And there are some biases that are built into the way that these companies poll. Those biases tend to depress conservative voters. Conservatives tend to be much more guarded in how they identify themselves to a stranger on the telephone. The way these polls usually work is they just dial randomly. These companies dial out and they say, would you like to take part in our survey? And most people just hang up on them. That's the reality. We just don't talk to strangers on our phone. We see a number we don't recognize, we don't answer it. So you either get hung up on or you just get voicemail, which doesn't help. That phenomena is starting to skew sample sizes to the more senior side of the population. But as you know, the boomer generation, they're dying off, and the millennial generation now make up the largest voting bloc. So you're oversampling seniors, the boomer generation and Gen X, and you're undersampling millennials, even Gen Zs who are able to vote now. God, it's a weird feeling to... And yes, I said Z. It's Z in Canada, but I understand that I have an American audience. But and of course, if that bias affects few dozen of the samples, it's going to move the result because these sample sizes are so small compared to the size of the country. The other bias is that urban voters, many of them don't have landlines. We just use cell phones. Now, this is going to be I don't know if this is different in Canada or the US. I'm not sure. Someone can point it out to me if it is. But, oh man, I got a really itchy nose for some reason. But anyways, in Canada, you can purchase a listing of all of the landline phone numbers from the phone companies. So our major phone companies are Bell, Rogers, Telus. The fourth one is Shaw, which I think just got bought by Rogers. So we have like these big telecoms, and then there are some smaller companies that kind of lease the equipment off the big telecoms. But you can go to those companies and buy the listing of the landlines, almost like a phone book, but it's in digital format, so you can feed it into your auto dialer. So they don't just dial the numbers randomly like scammers do. they get a listing of valid phone numbers and feed that into the system. And so they'll call numbers that work. And when they call a number that's been disconnected, it gets purged out of the system. Which is why the quality of that list can often be used as an indication as to whether this whoever's calling you is just a scammer from India, Bangladesh, or whatever. Based on how many bad dials that system makes. So, you cannot buy a listing of cell phones in Canada. I think it's a regulatory problem. I think it's within the CRTC that you can't do so. I don't remember or recall exactly why you can't. You're just not able to. You can't go to TELUS and say, I want all of the cell phone numbers that are registered to TELUS Mobility. That gives rise to another problem. You're going to oversample landlines. The demographic that typically keeps landlines around are rural voters. Even suburban, if you're in a good cell area, most people just cut the landline and just keep the cell phone only. That's especially true if you're in a place like a apartment condo, townhouse complex, where getting service hooked up is always it can be a pain in the rear end. So that's some of the problems with polling. Boy, I could talk again. I could talk about this stuff forever and ever. Now we got a unique insight, and so I'll get out of here. Ad. Main Street Research, one of our Canadian poll firms, had a polling disaster in Calgary's civic election. They got the result so far wrong, so badly wrong, and everyone was left scratching their heads afterwards. Now, of course, polling at the civic level is much different to polling at the national level. But, and again, same data, right? You can see the sample size. And I'll go through the party breakdown up here in just a second. But just to finish my thought on the Main Street Research, there was actually a inquiry into what caused that disaster. Main Street Research is hired typically by our conservative leading post-media newspapers. So that would be the Calgary Herald, the National Post, the Sun. That inquiry kind of peeked into this whole polling process. And that one of these days I'll actually go through that report. It can be interesting if that's the topic you're into. But what is important to note from that report was that they had identified the same things I just talked about: oversampling landlines, oversampling certain demographic groups. So when you feed garbage into an algorithm, you're going to get garbage results. So polling, that's what happened in 2016. And they had a very similar reckoning too. Polling firms had a very similar reckoning of why they got 2016 so wrong. It just so happens that that was actually a close race, and Hillary Clinton could have won had some counties flipped and gone a certain way. But um, just that. But anyways, I got a little distracted by something on the screen there. Oh, I think you guys might have actually heard that. I should turn off the notification noises for. Anyways, we'll deal with that some other day. Like I said, I'm testing out my new setup. Okay, let's talk about the Manitoba election. That's what's going on here. Now that we know that these are the polls that feed these models, right? So sites like this are aggregators of all of these different polls. So a single poll comes out to some sort of conclusion saying, okay, these people are winning. This website is the aggregate of all that, and they also weight these. You can see their reputation rating here. It doesn't show the. Oh, that's interesting. There was a. There's been a 9-point shift. Oh, that's very interesting. Okay. So what are we looking at here? We're going to start with an introduction to the parties that are running in the Manitoba provincial election. So, in Canada, blue is our conservative color. The PC party stands for the Progressive Conservative Party. Our conservatives tend to be more to the left of American counterparts. Evangelical Republicans tend to be a bit more hardcore in their social beliefs than the typical Canadian conservative. That's just the legacy of our universal health care. And so our conservative parties like to brand themselves as the progressive conservatives or the new conservatives or something like that. You'll see that very similar in the UK. We call our conservatives the Tories as well. That's our nickname for them, and that is a throwback to the old times of Britain. We don't use Whigs to refer to liberals anymore. That has long since gone. But yeah. The Tories have stuck around quite a bit. Same with Australia too. Now the New Democrat Party, the orange people here, they would be social democrats would be the best way to describe them. They're very akin to the Labour Party in other in places like Britain and Australia. These would be your Bernie Sanders, AOC, some of your more socialist leaning Democrats. People like Joe Manchin would not join the NDP if they were in Canada. You know, these pragmatic liberals, pragmatic Democrats, as you would call them. Joe Manchin would end up with this red one is the Liberal Party, so that's the Manitoba Liberal Party. And this would be our equivalent of the Democrat Party as a whole. Liberal Democrats in, say, in Britain and Australia. We have a Green Party. The US has a Green Party as well. So does the UK. So does Australia. And they're very similar in beliefs. I would say they're a bit different from the German Green Party, if you're familiar with them. But they're certainly very similar in belief system to the American Green Party. And so they always pull a couple of percentage points, and they don't really win much. Every now and then, one of them sneaks in because they're hugely popular in that local area. and they just happen to align with a party, and the voters give them a chance. But yeah, the Green Party never gets a smell of victory, and occasionally they do win a seat or two, and they're able to tip the balance of power. As I was explaining before, in minority government situations, and it looks like we're headed there in this election. You can see these two top parties are in the 40s. They're not in the 50s, 50 plus range. Now, this is their cross-provincial poll. And as I'm going to show you, you could end up with more votes and still lose the election because of where those votes were concentrated. We, in the polling industry, we refer to that as an inefficient vote. Typically, if you have voters that are equally spread across a province, you're going to have what's called the efficient vote. And it means that your popularity, your percentage popularity, is going to correspond roughly with how many seats you get. But if your vote condenses into large urban areas, you're going to have an inefficient vote because you're winning seats by landslide margins, and then you're losing close contests everywhere else. That happened in the Alberta provincial election. The NDP's vote in Alberta is concentrated in the two big cities, Calgary and Edmonton. That vote was very inefficient. So while they were polling neck and neck with the United Conservative Party in Alberta, in the end they ended up losing quite a bit. There's a several seat margin in the Alberta legislature right now, and it was on the back of that inefficient vote. They were landsliding certain ridings in Edmonton, and so it gave them the illusion that they were a lot closer in the race than they actually were. So that's the party breakdown, and of course these three are the main parties of Manitoba, and you'll find that's very similar right across all of our provinces. British Columbia is the weird exception. The Liberal Party in British Columbia were created from the remnants of an old social credit party, which tend to be quite conservative. So British Columbia Liberals are the Conservative Party of British Columbia. It's weird. It's just really weird. But you'll find the same thing in Ontario, right? Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, leads the Progressive Conservative Party. And the Ontario NDP and the Ontario Liberals are fighting for second place. Right now, I believe it's the NDP who's the official opposition. I think the Liberals used to govern Ontario back when I was a kid, and they have fallen so far, so far. The NDP has governed a province in some cases. You'll find they governed Alberta for 4 years. Alberta is one of our most conservative provinces. It's kind of like the Texas of Canada. We have a lot of oil. We're similar in that regard. So that would be the equivalent of Texas electing a Democrat governor. And so it was a really big deal when it happened in 2015. And then that government only lasted, it was a majority government, and it lasted 4 years. Then they got voted out in a huge landslide. And they came close last election, but couldn't quite get over the hump. So they got blown out in 2019, and then in 2023, last spring, they had just had an election and they lost. They lost again. The NDP has ruled in Manitoba before. The NDP has ruled in Ontario once under Premier Bob Rae. The Rae days, as we affectionately call it. I'm just going to kill that ad there. Distracting ads, but should get it. Well, I'm in on incognito. That's why the ad blocker isn't on. And the ads are a little intrusive, don't you think? Anyways, go away. So you're seeing a shift. So, of course, this graph shows you the change over time, right? These blue dots are where the aggregator says, based on all of the polls that we have available, this is what we think is going to happen. And this is the voting intention, right? So this is the cross-province-wide support. You can see, this is 2023 right here. You can see that the Conservative Party has been trending upwards. And that is the thing that I always zero in when I look at aggregation sites like this. I don't put a lot of stock into any single line, right? Okay, well, they're here today. That's great. That was quite a few weeks ago. Where are we going to be tomorrow? And where are we going to be on vote night? And so you look for trends. And the trend here is moving upwards. These shaded regions show the uncertainty, so that plus or minus. And so when you do opinion polls and you feed this representative sample through your formula, you'll get a margin of error. And that margin of error is represented by this plus or minus 4%. And what they say is that we're not precisely sure that 43% of people are going to vote for the PC party. It could be up to 47. It could be as low as 39. That is represented by this shade. The more certain a forecast is, the narrower that shaded blue section will be. So you'll see that they got the plus or minus 2 here on the Green Party. So they're fairly confident that the Green Party is going to get close to 4%. And actually, they lost confidence as time went on. You can see here, they were plus or minus maybe 1%. And so there's always a little bit of uncertainty in these polls. When the uncertainty starts getting up to like 6, 7, 8, that's when the pollster really has no clue. They're spitballing. They're really just making it up. They have no clue what people are thinking and what they're doing. And so that's the cross-provincial average. Shout out to the people who are watching right now. Feel free to throw some questions in the chat if you got any questions. Oh, and I have the result from the last general election here too. So this was, so it's an incumbent PC government. And this is, yeah, and as you can see, it was quite the win for the PCs, right? Plus 15% on vote night. That's enough to get you to victory. As you'll find out, the seat breakdown, hitting up into 46% in a three-party system, is usually good enough for you to win the election. So let's have a look. We're going to have a look at the seat by seat projection breakdown. So currently, the NDP are projected to win this race. But look at that margin. And of course, the error that translates to is denoted in these numbers here. It goes low as 21, as high as 34. Which shows that there's a lot of uncertainty. But what you're seeing here is that this that 46% translated to 38 seats. Due to quick math here, 56, 59. There are 59 seats in Manitoba, and you need 29 seats for a majority, shown right here. And again, majority, 50 plus 1, means that if everyone gangs up against you, you cannot be defeated. And so, the incumbent PCs had a pretty sizable majority last election, 2019. Now, they're looking at a minority government, and this is the fun part right here. Because you don't get to that 29 threshold, if everyone gangs up against you, they can defeat you. But I explained that the NDP and the Liberals tend to work together very well. They have similar beliefs. Liberals tend to be a bit more pragmatic when it comes to social spending. That, of course, does not include Justin Trudeau, because he is to the left of the NDP in many respects. But Justin Trudeau is not part of the provincial Liberal Party. He's part of the federal Liberal Party. They are different entities. They have similar belief systems, but they're definitely separate. So it's not fair to just say, well, whatever Justin Trudeau believes in is what the Manitoba Liberal Party believes in. But certainly these two parties are the ones that are most likely to get along, vote together on issues. And you can see that adding these two together would get you to that 29 majority. So it would be an NDP minority government propped up by the Liberals. And I've always been sketchy on this one because this doesn't happen very often, but I do believe when you win the most seats, you get the first chance to form government. That the incumbent, so the way it works is we hold the election, you dissolve our legislature, and then the legislature returns with the election results. What happens next if the incumbent government loses the election? They do have to resign. Losing the election doesn't automatically remove you from government. So what would happen is that the government here goes to the lieutenant governor, which is the governor general of the provinces, the lieutenant governor, who represents the Queen at the provincial level, the head of the province, right? The premier is the head of the executive, but the head of subnational jurisdiction is the lieutenant governor. And so the PC government, they're the incumbents, they're currently the government, they would go to the lieutenant governor and resign, saying, we got defeated in the election, it's time for us to go. Man, these pop-up ads are annoying. The reason I'm in incognito is I don't want you guys seeing all the stuff that I browse every day. It could be some, you don't want to see it. I'll just tell you that. You don't want to see it. Anyways, and of course the margin of error too, so it's possible the NDP actually gets 28 or higher, in which case they'd be a majority government. They can do whatever they want. They don't have to negotiate with any of the other parties. The PCs are the ones that they're in trouble. Because in a minority government situation, if they win, let's say we switch these two, right? They get 28 and the NDP gets 27. The PCs get the first chance to form government. They're the incumbent. They didn't lose the election. They get the first chance to form government. And the very first thing they do is a throne speech. And then comes the confidence motion. Can they keep the confidence of Parliament? Or the legislature in this case. And so these two Liberals would have to vote with the PC government for the government to survive. If they decide not to, and they decide to vote with the NDP, that defeats the government, the lieutenant governor will then ask the NDP and the Liberals to form a coalition to govern the province. If they're not able to agree on that coalition, then a new election is held. Usually, they could agree on a coalition. This has happened in British Columbia a couple of times where the NDP and the Green Party have been able to collaborate and work together on a supply and confidence deal. This is the electoral district breakdown. So, of course, you can see who's currently holding the seat. The PC party owns all these seats here. Brandon would be, I think, the next largest city in Manitoba, but it's not a very big city at all. Like Winnipeg, you'll see when we get down to Winnipeg, it dominates the entire province in terms of population. So for the PCs to win the election, you can see that these are some close races here in Brandon East. They're toss-ups. which means that the statistical, again, these extrapolate from the provincial wide results. So it takes into account the way a riding typically is voted in the past and what the provincial wide result is currently sitting at. Or projection, sorry, not the result, the projection is sitting at. And they use that to determine these projections. So we'll pop into the singular riding in just a second. But seats are selected from ridings. To win a riding, you simply have to win more votes than anyone else. You don't need 50 plus 1. We don't do runoffs. Hello, Ken. How you doing, friend? Check out Ken Jennings' channel, or Ken's Counseling Couch. He's, I've done shenanigans on his channel many, many times, but... Oh, we gotta go into the psychology of voting sometime. That would be a fun topic to talk about. But, anyways, Ken asked in the chat, hypothetically, how can I fortify the next Canadian election to allow my hypothetical Cuban dictator's son to become Supreme Chancellor of Canada and promote a hypothetical, and I emphasize the hypothetical, superior race? Well, because this is Canada, not the United States, the superior race would probably be the F1 race that happens in Toronto every year. I'd say that's the superior race. There's a Grand Prix that happens in Toronto or Montreal. I don't know if Vancouver has one, but yeah. Oh, Ken's packing fudge. He's a fudge packer. Of course, the Cuban dictator's son is a reference to the joke that Justin Trudeau's real father is Fidel Castro. Justin Trudeau's mother is well known to have cheated on her husband, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, several times. That's her reputation here in Canada. She's dead now, but is she? Oh, maybe. I don't remember if she's dead or not. Pierre is dead. Pierre Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's the guy who raised Justin Trudeau, his alleged father, is dead. Has been for quite some time. Oh, also, Justin Trudeau had a brother who was killed in a skiing accident a long time ago. He has two brothers, Alex Trudeau and I think Sasha Trudeau. I think Sasha was the one who was killed in a skiing accident out in British Columbia. They never recovered his body. So somewhere in one of the glacial lakes of British Columbia, there's the body of a Trudeau just hanging out down there. Sounds like some real sus stuff, right? But anyways, our elections are pretty fortified. Oh yeah, I can. Okay. Yeah, I'll deal with the ad things some other time. I'm just running stuff, but oh yeah, I will talk about the Murdaugh thing once I wrap up here with this. But actually, hang on a second. I am going to I am distracted. What I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give Ken a wrench. The reason I have to look over my shoulder is I have like a giant monitor up here on my this is my right side. I don't know if my video is flipped or for you guys, but I have a giant monitor sitting here right on my right side, which just assails me with heat. But yeah, so if I'm looking over my neck, it's because I'm looking for the top corner of that monitor so I can hit like the minimize button. Yeah, I know keyboard shortcuts, and I'll get around to it one of these days, but yeah, that's that. Anyways, back to this. That was a bit of a derailment. But back to this topic. And like I said, so what's annoying me is that the Winnipeg ridings don't have Winnipeg in front of them. So you can't, unless you know this province very well, you wouldn't be able to tell which ones are Winnipeg seats. It's very annoying, but whatever. Flin Flon, one of the funniest town names in all of Canada. Hey, where are you from? Oh, I'm from the masculine town of Flin Flon. Alright, let's look at Brandon East. So, what do these individual riding results mean? Ken uses ADHD. Yeah, no, I gave, that distraction was to give Ken a wrench. I've wrenched Ken, because he's such a wrench. He's a dirty wrench. So they actually have a disclaimer here on how they calculate that. So, yeah, this is a projection based on polls. Model takes into account electoral history and other data. The other data usually is economic data, so the unemployment rate for the region, I can't think of any other specific numbers at the moment. Definitely the unemployment rate. Certainly the other economic factors of that town, city, or region would weigh into that. One of the realest, most consistent aspects of elections, when the economy is doing well, it tends to bode well for the incumbent government. When the economy is doing really poorly, and we're seeing that with a lot of the inflation up here in Canada, the unemployment rate hasn't really moved a lot, but the cost of living is spiraling out of control. Inflation is driving a lot of it. Housing prices, it's a huge conversation in Canada right now. We don't have enough houses for all 6 people that live here. It's tough. It's tough. You know how hard it is to build a house? You have to get permits, and more permits, and permits, and laws, and permits, and fees, and permits. Yeah. That's what's driving this. It's an artificial crisis made by government incompetence. Surprise, surprise. But it is what it is. One of the fun dynamics here, because of the 3-party system, we have a common complaint called vote splitting. It's not a concept or you're going to be familiar with down in the States. It's very rare that it happens. Certainly, you could think of the legendary vote splits, Florida, Bush, Gore, right? But it's much more common up here because we have the multi-party system. I've said a couple times now, the NDP and the Liberals, they tend to think very similar to one another. They're very alike. Well, their voters are also very alike. They can switch between the two. In fact, when you ask them, okay, so if you don't vote for the NDP, who else would you consider voting for? Most of them will say immediately, oh, the Liberal Party. Very few of them will say the Conservative Party. And so vote split, you can see here that the more votes that the Liberals get, it will bite into this NDP lead and cause it to start coming down. That's why this plus 9% is here. So it's the plus 4 is the margin of error, but every single vote here is taking a vote from these guys. So that goes up while this goes down. The other thing they're not sure of is because in 2019, the PC's got 51% of the vote, which is very high. And so the historical data is telling them that this place tends to vote conservative, but their data is showing them that it might go NDP. The lack of confidence in that number is what's driving that plus 9% margin of error. Okay. Now, let's extrapolate. This is one riding, right? One riding, one seat. Toss-up. But it's shaded slightly orange, which means that they think it's got a more chance. It's like a 50 plus 1% chance. You actually see it's a 64% chance of winning Brandon to the NDP party. But the pollster here, the model, the projection here is that it is more likely than not that the NDP will win this seat. Okay. That feeds the rest of the projection. So let's go back to the total projection. And now you see one of those seats is listed in this 3 toss-up. And you can see there's actually 3 seats listed here in the toss-up. So what happens if the pollsters get it wrong and they lose all 3 of those seats? And they end up going to the PC party. Well, this number goes up to... Well, there's 5 total toss-ups. They think 1's going to go PC, 1 Liberal, and 3 go to the NDP. The toss-up means that the margin of error is such that the other party can still win the seat. They're not mathematically eliminated, and it's going to matter which party turns their people out on election night. Leaning says that you're okay. I'm pretty confident that these guys are leading. They're expected to win, but it's still not mathematically eliminated for the other parties. But a lot would need to happen for that seat to flip. Likely is still not mathematical elimination, but it's practical elimination. The lead in one of those seats is such that there would have to be some major intervening event for that seat to flip, or the pollster just totally blew the prediction. And then the safe seats are where you have mathematical elimination. It's just there's not enough votes in that riding, even if you to overcome the margin of error. We'll look at those in just a second to just see what those numbers look like. But I want to focus on the toss-ups because that's where the selection is going to get won or lost. Brandon East is one of those toss-ups. And it's historically a PC seat. So you're seeing the pollster not comfortable with saying that I'm going to flip this seat just yet. And so I'm going to throw it in the toss-up column. And that, if that number doesn't pan out, this number starts suffering. And so you can see the margin here is 7, right? It's as low as 7, or it can go up to, go 7 seats down, or go 6 seats up. Well, there are 5 here. And then 2 of the likelies, and they'll do, I guess they do half, like half minus 1, or half minus 0.5 of likely seats on your worst night. This is, you had the worst night possible. All your voters forgot it was the election. That is what happens when you get down to this lower number. Of course, the higher number is that the other party forgot that there was an election going on. So, the interesting thing to notice is that the minimum and the maximum for the PCs, they're lower. Or, well, the minimum's higher and the maximum is lower. Which means that the pollster is more confident in this 27 number than they are of this 28 number. That just goes to show the variation, right? There's only minus 5, and plus 6, as opposed to minus 7 and plus 8. Or sorry, plus 6. Math. There's more confidence that they're going to get closer to this 27 than the NDP getting this 28. What is driving that? Well, I pointed out to you in a place like Brandon East, if the Liberals start taking more votes and those votes are coming from the NDP, it's going to drag them down disproportionately. It's going to have a massive impact on their results in the election. Let's have a look at some of the numbers for a likely seat. So we'll go to Assiniboia. Currently held by the PCs, but he only just won it, okay? You can see in 2019, 44%, it was a close race. Right now, they have the NDP projected at 49% plus or minus 8. Okay. So the margin of error is, the spread is not covered by this minus 8. So if the 37 is correct, but the minus 8 comes down, they still win. So you're not technically mathematically eliminated because this is also plus 8, right? So this number can go up by plus 8 and this can come down by minus 8. That would be the nightmare scenario for the NDP. To have the lowest possible performance and then your competition has their highest possible performance. So, and the way that would work, because you would say, well, these are percentages, so as this one goes down, the others go up. Right. So the minus 8 here would get redistributed among these two people. And you can see, right, plus 5, plus 3. That's where they think that vote would go. And those are swing voters. So yeah, with a plus 8 and a minus 8 here, yeah, the PCs could win this riding. That is so unlikely to happen. There you go. 3% chance of happening is what the pollster assigns to this. It's actually much lower than that. So that's why they categorize this as a likely win for the NDP. Even if they have a bad performance on election night, they're still ahead. They're still likely to flip the seat and win it. Let's go to what a safe seat would look like. How you mathematically eliminate someone. Well, here. So the way you would mathematically eliminate someone, take the minus 8, that leaves it 49. Take the plus 7, brings it up to 30. You're still not catching them. You're not catching them, hence a safe seat, a less than 1%. Nothing is ever 100% certainty. That's why it won't show 100%. But and you can see here, even if the Liberals took all of the votes off, right, and did their plus 6, it does not matter. Right, the PCs can't catch a lead this high. And so that's how you're mathematically eliminated from contention. And let's have a look at a leaning seat. So the leaning seat, it shows that you're probably going to win. If these results hold, you're in the lead. You're in the lead outside of, well, you're still within the margin of error. But you have room for that error. I think it's half. If you have more than half of the error of space clearance from the next party, that's what they consider to be a leaning seat. And again, in 2019, this voted 42%. So again, this is a competitive seat. The person sitting at 38 is not very far off from the person who won with 42. So very, very competitive seat. So that's how you extrapolate province-wide performance. Now, province-wide performance is based on the performance of the party and its leader. That's important. There is still room in elections for the local performance of a popular candidate. You see that when athletes or movie stars run for office. In Ohio, J.D. Vance ran for the Senate seat. Vance is a book author, well-known political and social commentator. I'm not entirely sure of his star power in Ohio. I know him because I've read his book, Hillbilly Elegy. But he would have had more household name recognition than a lifetime lawyer turned politician. So that matters. And the way I like to quantify that, the star power, also the party leader has a local riding in our system. So one of these people is held by the current premier. One of these seats is held by the premier, and I don't remember which one. It's obviously going to be one of the safe PC ones. Yep, that's the premier. So Heather Stephenson is the current premier of Manitoba, but they also run in a local election in a seat. Now, you'll see, it's not a safe seat, but it is likely. I don't know why they have it here at... Interesting. It's not a safe seat. They only have it as likely, even though the chance of the other party's winning is, non-existent. I guess because of the very high-performing Liberal vote here, I guess they're saying that vote could consolidate behind the NDP and potentially upset. But yes, one of the reasons that this is projected to do so well for the PCs is it's held by the premier, the party leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. So that star power at the local level will cause you to outperform had a no-name run in that riding. That outperformance is usually about 5%. I also include that as part of the incumbent's advantage. People who already hold the seat have an advantage over those who are trying to steal the seat from you. You've had 4 years to build your name and your brand. You had also previously won an election. So people are going to recognize the name from the last election. Sometimes you win seats in a by-election, and that incumbent advantage is not nearly as high, but it's still there. It's still present because you've run before. You'll notice during elections, people put up these signs that say, vote for me, this is my name, this is my party, vote for me. Those signs will end up on people's lawns. There'll be large billboards out on the interstates or the highways. And it's all about getting your name out there. So people who already have that name recognition and you see that name on a sign, you're like, oh, yeah, I've heard that name before. That works. That actually has an impact on the voter. So, let's look at another toss-up seat here. Oh, Kildonan. Kildonan is I think it's a northwest suburb of Winnipeg. This is the demographic that the PC party has to win. So now I go into my projection, my analysis. I've just been using someone else's data up to this point, but this is where I start breaking down what needs to happen for a certain result to occur. And Kildonan River East is the seat that I really want to keep an eye on. I predict that whoever wins this seat will win the election. The PC party, and the reason being is that the Kildonan area is fairly conservative. The suburbs of major cities tend to vote conservative. This is true in all our big cities, Toronto, Calgary, even Vancouver. The area outside of Vancouver, like Surrey, can vote conservative. They go back and forth sometimes because it's Vancouver. It's the left coast. But especially the suburbs out of Toronto, we call that the 905 region because it's the area code for the area around Toronto. The city of Toronto proper is area code 416, and the area around it, Mississauga, Brampton, all the way out to the Durham region, so Oshawa, um, Oakville in the southwest. Those towns and cities that surround the city of Toronto, those are swing voters. They go conservative or liberal. What's up, Coop? How you doing, man? How's the missus? Um, Kildonan River East is a similar demographic profile. They're suburban voters. They're swing voters. They tend to lean conservative in personal belief, but because they're part of the big city, they will consider NDP friendly platform ideas. You know, they're concerned about addiction when they go downtown Winnipeg and they see all the people drugged up, tweaked out. Um, but they're also concerned with crime. Crime, law, and order tends to be a conservative or Republican platform that wins voters. Um, People in suburbs are not afraid to spend public money. So, yeah, again, like I said, you can be fiscally irresponsible and still believe in conservative beliefs, but that's why these voters swing back and forth between the progressive side of the scale and the conservative side of the scale. And you're seeing this borne out here. This is a riding that is very, very competitive, but it leans slightly towards the NDP. Again, watch the Liberal vote. If the Liberals underperform and they get under 10%, that vote likely will go to the NDP, which will cause them to overperform and give them the victory they need to win this riding. And no doubt the NDP is going into the Kildonan riding, knocking on doors and saying, hey, don't vote for the Liberals because that will split the vote and cost us the seat. The PCs will win, and we know that if you're a Liberal voter, you don't like the PCs very much. So if I'm on the ground and I'm advising the PCs, I'm telling the Liberals the reason you vote Liberal is that the NDP is too extreme for you. You like the medium. You like the happy medium, the NDP. You looked at them and you said, no, I'm going to vote Liberal. Okay. So either vote Liberal, vote for what you truly believe in, or vote for the PCs. Do not vote NDP, because if they win, you will not like what they're about. You'll not like what they do to this area. Part of what gave the PCs the landslide in 2019 is this performance in a swing area. Look at that, 51%, meaning that they easily won this riding, right? When you a three-party system and you go over 50%, no one can catch you. You're guaranteed to win the seat. But that also means that the margin you won it by is quite large too. While everyone else is stuck down in the 30s or the single digits. And then you pull out the 50 plus 1. Or 51.1, sorry. The fact that this has now moved the PC vote down to 42% projected means that the PCs are losing swing voters. In Canada, the swing voters tend to be, and it's similar in the United States too. It tends to be women who swing the vote. And you'll notice I pointed out the PC, Heather Stephenson, is a female premier going up against party leader Wab Kinew for the NDP. Wab Kinew is I forget if he's First Nations or Métis. He's definitely Indigenous. Or Native American for my American audience. But yeah, I think he'd be one of our first premiers of a major province to be Indigenous. Which, To me, that's not a really big deal. Those who know me know that I identify as First Nations as well, Native American, Indian, whatever you want to call it. That isn't a big deal to me. That would not cause me to vote for that guy. I have to align with you politically. And my personal beliefs tend on the conservative side of things, slightly libertarian. I don't know, it changes, it moves. That's just a product of where I live. I live in the conservative heartland of Canada, in Alberta and Calgary. But we can actually go look at the recent Alberta election there to just to highlight what I was talking about earlier. But my prediction is that whoever wins Kildonan will win the election and form government in Manitoba. Whether that's a majority or minority, it looks like it's headed to a minority. But it's right on that cusp. I also predict that the Progressive Conservatives, they were trending upward. Those polls tend to be about a week, maybe 2 weeks behind what the current state is. So if that upward trend holds until the end of the month when the election is held, the vote day is, I think it's October 1st or the last day of September, I forget. But or no, maybe it's October 4th. I think it's usually a Tuesday. Let me just double check the calendar here. Yeah, so the Tuesday would be October 3rd. I think that's when the vote is, October 3rd. Anyways, I think you're going to see a small outperformance of the PC versus the current projections. But I'm going to temper that with the upswing is we're still over 2 weeks from vote day. So your upswing is a little early. Now, are you going to lose that momentum, or are you just going to keep carrying that momentum? Again, you're a week behind when it comes to polling, so that data is 3 weeks before vote day. The PCs top out, right? They hit the maximum of their support for this election. They might actually start trending downwards, which will then cause them to underperform the current projection. And that's where all of this uncertainty is located. You can see, look, plus minus 8. There's a lot of uncertainty here. We don't know where this is going to end up because it's still too soon. There's a lot of people who are saying, I'm not sure I'm not sure who I'm voting for yet. But if current projections hold for the next 2 weeks, we're going to see the PC overperformance, which is going to cause these toss-up ridings to start moving in their favor. What you may also see, because the projections are trending upward, is that the NDP is going to get really aggressive in their stop-the-vote split messaging, which is going to depress the Liberal vote. The best thing for the PCs is a high Liberal vote. That's votes they're taking from the NDP. So let's go back to our projection. Yeah, the polls. So the Liberals are projected to do 11% across the province. If they end the night doing 12, 13%, that's going to bite right off of this and drop the NDP below 40. Once you fall below 40, it's almost impossible for you to win the election. The reason that either one of these parties can win the election is because they are both polling over 40%. My prediction, and because of the amount of uncertainty, I don't have a lot of confidence in this projection. But my prediction is that the PCs will overperform on election night. The Liberals will steal just enough votes. It's going to be a razor-thin margin, but it's just enough votes taken from the NDP to cost them 2 or 3 seats. Those 2 or 3 seats will give the PCs a almost perfect majority government. 29 seats would be my projection. However, my confidence in that projection is quite low. This is the scenario, and what drives the overperformance of the PCs is called the Shai-Tori effect. I alluded to this earlier, but it is a quantifiable misallocation of the vote share of conservative-leaning parties. There's a lot of social factors that play into that. I'd like to think that it possibly has to do with people who are scared of getting fired from their job, who don't want to identify as conservative. I don't think that actually is reality. That's not born in reality in any way. It more likely is the type of person who tends to vote conservative. They're very guarded. They tend to be a lot more. They tend to care a lot more about the individual, their freedoms, their rights, and so they'll more hesitant to talk to a pollster who is a stranger who just calls them randomly. Right? These are not self-selected surveys. These are random dialing surveys. Or not random dialing, but randomly selected from a pool of phone numbers. And if you have a cell phone and you've been called by a pollster before and you're saying, like, well, how'd they get my cell phone number? There are a lot of ways you can get your cell phone number. These polling companies can purchase your cell phone number from data aggregation companies. Facebook is a good example, although Facebook doesn't always collect your phone number, and I don't think they legally can sell your phone number. But there are companies that do collect that information and can sell it. Or perhaps you gave your phone number to someone on purpose. One of the polling companies, one of the media companies that sponsor the poll. If you ever enter like a media contest, that's how they got your phone number. If you've ever expressed support for a party in the past, you may have given them your phone number. They then call you and say, "Hey, are you still with us?" So, yes, they do sample cell phones. They do get cell phone numbers, but it's not drawn from a fully randomized pool like landlines are, because if you don't have everyone's cell phone number and you know who is on the other end of that phone number picking up the phone, then you can't have a truly random representative sample. It will always be tempered by the people who are not in the pool. So, anyways, the Shai-Tori effect. That Shai-Tori effect is quantified at about 1 to 2% every election. Let's, and of course, if you add 2% to the PCs, they came from somewhere, right? It came from someone. And so they would obviously drop probably just once across the board here and give them to the PCs. But that would be enough to actually flip the election in their favor. So you can see how close this is. Debate performance is going to be key. I haven't actually been paying attention to any of the Manitoba debates, but if I do see one, maybe I'll do a live stream covering it. And shout out to, looks like I got 6 people watching, so shout out to all of you guys. Good to see you. I hope you're learning something. Anyways, the other thing I want to go to is I want to check out the Alberta results from last election, and then I think I'm gonna wrap it up. If people got any questions or something they want me to look at or go into, if you missed the early part of the stream too, I announced that I will be doing more frequent content through the fall. One of my criminal law courses has a component where I have to attend court and write reports on the proceedings of that court case. I thought that would be good material to use for either live streams or pre-recorded. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with that yet. Right now, my priority is the road to 1,000 subscribers, monetize this channel, and I could turn it into something I do every night. Oh, right, and I also want to talk about the Murdaugh trial. Thanks for reminding me. As crickets in the chat. I'll briefly talk about the Murdaugh trial after I do the quick look. I'm not going to spend much time on the Alberta election because it was last spring. It's old news. Chris Tim is at it again. Yes, I am. Um. Oh yeah, and the people, people subscribe to this channel maybe don't follow me in Drex's Discord. You're wondering what I'm up to or what Drex is up to. I think Drex is still planning on making his return to YouTube, but he wants to do live content and commentary on the ground. We're not reviving the old show. And the old show didn't end under bad circumstances. We had so much fun with those the episode 100 was unforgettable. Yeah, the old show was so much fun to do. That's how you spell Murdaugh. But yeah, we ended the old show because it had progressed to its natural endpoint. I like to compare it to when Bill Waters ended Calvin and Hobbes. And a lot of people said that comic could have gone on much, much longer. But Waters said that this was the natural limit. This was the end of this comic. Leave while you're on top. Right? Don't overstay your welcome. Don't do the Brett Favre. Overstay your welcome. Stay a lot longer, and then now no one wants to do. You've destroyed your brand essentially because no one wants to look at it anymore. It's gone stagnant. Got old, and that was what was happening to MGTOW. We had said a lot of the things that we had already wanted to say. Things were being repeated. Yeah, we were having guests. We were having recurring guests, and things were a lot of fun. But we had told people everything that Drex needed to tell them. And so at the height of our popularity is when we were having I would say the height of Drex's popularity was the summer of 22. No. Yeah. And then once fall come around, we were oh no. All good, guys. All good. Good to see you checking in, but hey, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I appreciate it. It helped me a lot. It's a road to 1,000, so last I checked I was at 300, I think. 296 right now. How did I lose subscribers? That's depressing. But anyways, so the future of this channel is I hope to do a lot more law content. I hope to bring guests in. I hope to guest on other channels to promote. I'm actually talking with the Dragon's Treasure right now. I know those of you guys who watch Manic the Manic Mechanic will be familiar with the Dragon's Treasure. I'm talking with him to see if I can get sponsorship on this channel. That would be cool. Start generating a little bit of income. And of course, there are people in my personal life who are subscribed to this channel that know me. So a shout out to you too. It's going to be weird having the people in my real life interact with the people from my online life. So I'm looking forward to that. It's I cannot adequately equip, for those of you who know me personally, I cannot adequately equip you for the people that are you're going to interact with who will come from my online life in Discord. You'll see them refer to me as Lawst. That's the name. That was everyone knows my online name as Lost Bullets. I've had that online name for years, almost a decade, I'd say. I've been going by that online name, which then I, of course, the original spelling was Lost, and then someone else took that name, so I had to change it to Laust. And then, of course, being a law-focused channel, I could work in the word law into the spelling. So that's how I ended up at Lawst. Those who know me online will say Lawst, but everyone, or producer Tim, that's how they know me. The people in my real life, they might call me asshole. That's the one swear I get in the entire stream. That's my PG-13 one swear word. But okay, let's jump over to Alberta. But yeah, hope to do a lot more law content. We'll talk about Murdaugh once I'm done with Manitoba, once I'm done with Alberta. So we'll have to go back to the homepage. Alberta. Okay, so this is what I was talking about here. So this is a good graph. This shows the projection in the lead up to the Alberta election last spring. And you can see that at one point the NDP was actually favored to win the election. But then as the campaign went on, the United Conservative Party had their upswing. And you can see that they just kept going up, 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 which is the prediction that I'm having in the Manitoba. Oh, no, I'm not, Koopa, I'm not on Rumble. Because I'm using OBS on my local desktop right now. I'm not in StreamYard. My first priority is to monetize the YouTube channel, so I'm only focusing on that at the moment. I don't anticipate going into a lot of the controversial topics that Rackets goes into. I also don't ever think that I'll get as big as Rackets on YouTube. Rekieta, for those who don't know, Nick Rekieta, check him out, Rekieta Law. He's my inspiration for doing this channel, along with Legal Vices, Jeff, both Andrews, Andrew Bronca, Law of Self-Defense, and Legal Mindset. These are the, and Joe, obviously, at Good Logic, Kurt with Uncivil Law. These are the law tubers that I watch and that I've taken inspiration from to do this channel. I don't think I'll ever get as big as them. I certainly don't anticipate YouTube becoming my full-time job. I actually do want to practice law. I think I will have to practice law. But right now, the focus is getting to monetization. I can make a little bit of money, and that lets me improve the content of the channel. That lets me purchase transcripts from courthouses. That lets me travel to different courts. I can travel to court in Edmonton, Calgary, even Toronto, if I make enough money doing it. I could fly to Ottawa and cover the Freedom Convoy trial. Huh. Shroomophobia. You know what the sad part is? Hang on a second. I'm going to let's see if I can kill the webcam feed here, or actually I can just It's going to look weird, but I'm just going to throw the privacy shutter on the webcam for a second. I will be right back. Speaking of shroomophobia. Hang out for a second. Argue with each other in the chat. All right. Making all this noise here. Throw that back on. Man, noise canceling headphones are fun. I have no idea how loud I'm talking. All right, flip the... Good. All right. Speaking of shroomophobia, I got a bowl of mushrooms here. Now, it's bad practice to eat on stream, but I think for the memes, you can. I mean, I love mushrooms. I love eating mushrooms. Um, like actual edible mushrooms, not the hallucinogenic mushrooms. Um, I'll put mushrooms on anything, man. You know. Anyways, I'll eat a mushroom on stream for shout out to the shroomophobia. All right, distractions aside, I was talking about how the upward trend, the upward swing, is what I was projecting for the Manitoba election. You see this here in the Alberta provincial election. I wish I could zoom in on the scale here, but yeah, it's not going to let me. But that's fine. And so this is the Conservative government led by Premier Daniel Smith. And you can see they've actually gotten more popular since the election, so that's good. But oh yeah, this was crazy. This was all because this race was really close. You could see these projections are all over the place. But from the call of the election, you can see the upward trend, the upward trajectory. So again, I look for patterns. Patterns is how you're these projections are the patterns are how I arrive at my predictions. I see these graphs, I internalize these numbers, and I can extrapolate a conclusion from them. Now, Alberta is fun because Alberta is a two-party race, two-party jurisdiction. There are third parties. They don't take much of the vote. They're not listed. Here they are. Yeah, so we have a Green Party in Alberta's provincial election. We have an Alberta Party, which is this light blue here, which are like left-leaning conservatives. It's weird because you're going to have the Alberta Party is kind of the home for the rhinos. The people who call themselves conservative, they have to because it's a conservative province. It's our conservative heartland. But there are people who believe in left-leaning policies, but they want to call themselves conservatives. And so that's where you'll find the Alberta Party. And then this blue one here, this dark blue, is the United Conservative Party. We actually used to have two conservative parties in Alberta, the Wild Rose Party and the Progressive Conservative Party. When the NDP won in 2015, it was on the back of that vote split between the two conservative parties. And so Jason Kenney, who was a federal minister at the time, resigned his seat in Ottawa, came out to Alberta, and united the two parties together. Then COVID happened, everyone hated him, kicked him out, replaced him with Daniel Smith. But Daniel Smith was a former leader of the Wild Rose Party. She had actually ran in elections prior to 2015 and lost. She then attempted to do a floor cross and merge the Wild Rose Party with the PCs, but without the input of the voting populace. The way Jason Kenney did it is he held the referendum of the party membership, and they were able to approve the merger. The way Daniel Smith did it is she just crossed the floor. Floor crossers, people who, because typically the parties sit opposite each other in our legislature, so crossing the floor means going from one party and joining a different party. So she joined the government in order to win who knows what her motivation was, but the people absolutely hated that. And so they rejected her, voted for the NDP in 2015. The turnout was really low. There was a lot of vote splitting going on, and that's how you end up with an NDP government in the most conservative province in Canada. Well, here we are now in 2023. And like I said, the people who did not like that merger, because the president, oh my goodness, I think I had a stroke there. The Progressive Conservative Party was where the Rhinos lived before. Then the parties merged and they just became conservative. There was no progressive conservative about it. And so the Rhinos moved to the Alberta Party, and that's kind of where they hang out now. There is also a provincial Liberal Party. They're not showing up here for a reason or another. But again, these are parties that get very small percentages of the vote. Where is the vote prediction? They only have the two parties because they're the only two that matter. So yeah, the dynamic in Alberta tends to be more similar to the dynamic in the US with the Republican versus the Democrat. Yeah, there are third parties. They get a negligible number of votes. Those votes don't tend to move the needle. I've never been one to say that, when you have 16 people to vote for on a ballot, that the 15 who didn't win or the 14 who came behind the guy in second place stole votes from the guy in second place. I've never really subscribed to that notion. I think when you have a diversity of choices on the ballot, you will vote for who aligns with you. If you don't see a good choice on a ballot, you don't vote. I've never really subscribed to the belief that a lot of people, some do, I mean, some do, that's inevitable, but I've never subscribed to the belief that a lot of people go into the ballot box, hold their nose, and say, oh, I hate this guy, but I'm going to vote for him because I want what's best for this province. Well, you wouldn't do that. Like, it's a bit of a misnomer in your head because you're voting for someone that you considered before and decided, no, I'm not going to vote for this guy. I don't think he's good for the province. Of course, those fringe outlier cases are just when a person is personally unlikable, but you think that, they can govern a province just fine, but I just don't like this guy. So. And then if you do the district by district breakdown, the entirety of this election was fought in the city of Calgary. Look how close that was. All over the place here. But yeah, in the end, the Conservatives won Calgary's districts. I'm not seeing any, for the most part, when they predicted the outcome, they got it right. But yeah, see, unlike Manitoba, they actually say, like, Calgary Acadia is the naming, so you can tell which of the ridings belong in Calgary. We'll have a look at Edmonton here. All 87. I love this little, like, snake chart. But yeah, this was the path to the PC majority. Oh, interesting. Okay, so this was updated. So this was before the... No, this was after the election was held. So these are the incumbent seats. Okay. Yeah, so these are the seats that flipped right here. These were Conservative seats, and they flipped in the election. All of these. Up to this one, Calgary Klein. And then these ones stayed... Oh, this one flipped. But then... Many of these then stayed the same, especially... you can see Edmonton, right? Edmonton is well represented in the safe NDP seats. There's a couple of Calgary seats in the safe, but most of these are Edmonton. Edmonton is just a city that loves the NDP for whatever reason. It's a government town. It's the capital of Alberta. That's where our legislature is. It's this is it's disappointing. But this race came down to the bellwether ridings are right here in the middle, and it was especially three ridings in particular. It was where is it? Yeah, it was Calgary Pagan, Calgary Acadia, and Calgary Glenmore. Right. Those three ridings are located in the same part of the city, along one singular expressway. They have very similar demographic profiles. They all share parts with the federal ridings who vote conservative. So Calgary Glenmore makes up Calgary Heritage, which is actually former Prime Minister Stephen Harper's old riding. It's very conservative. Jason Kenney's federal seat was Calgary Midnapore, which overlaps with Calgary Acadia. And Calgary Pagan is where you'll find, I think it's the Calgary Forest Lawn federal seat, which was held by a very popular East Indian MP before he passed away. It's now held by Jasraj Halan, I believe. But yeah, those were the three bellwether seats. And at the time I made the prediction, I don't think I did a video on this on my channel, and I really should have. It was a missed opportunity. But I made the projection that losing all three seats would cost the Conservatives the government. In the end, they lost 2 of 3. They also pulled some stunning upsets. Calgary Cross was one of them. All election, it was predicted that Calgary Cross was going to become an NDP seat. They got it wrong. The reason being is that the local candidate was the son of a former MLA. He was also the incumbent. So all of those factors I talked about earlier, the Shy Tory effect, the incumbent advantage, and the powerful local candidate, came together, converged, and was the difference in flipping this seat. And that was a prediction I had made more than a month ahead of the actual election, because I knew that that's held by Mickey Amory, who's the son of Mo Amory. He was a vastly popular MLA back in the day. Mick is a chip off the old block, very good political guy. He's actually now the Minister of Justice, I think. So, lawyer background. And I haven't had a chance to interact with him personally very much, but I've heard nothing but good things about his work ethic and his standing in the community. So this is an example I point to where the local race mattered. Calgary Acadia was held by the health minister during COVID, Tyler Shandro. So now you can see kind of why this is the exact same thing, but going the other way. This was a vastly unpopular incumbent. Although he lost by 30 votes. Like, this race was really close. I think he only lost by, or no, less than, no. He lost by 12 votes, I think. On election night, he lost by 8 votes. But then they recounted and they ended up losing, I think, by 12 or 14 votes. But, very, very, very close. These ridings are about 30,000 people. I think about 20,000 end up voting. So you can just, a margin of less than 20 out of 20,000 votes, that you can see how close that was. But those 20 votes, perhaps they were influenced by Tyler Shandro's role, his role as health minister during the COVID lockdowns. He also had some scandals and controversies during his time in office. He's under investigation. He's also a lawyer. He's under investigation by the Alberta Law Society, which certifies our lawyers, right? It's our version of the bar. So again, the same effect work in the opposite way. Banff Kananaskis was another one that was held by the PCs and flipped to the NDP. It's also the location of a lot of our natural parks. So, of course, Banff is well known, even to Americans, as our crown jewel of national parks. Kananaskis is the area surrounding Banff, which is a provincial park jurisdiction, but it includes all of the Rocky Mountains, the Alberta Rocky Mountains. The BC Rocky Mountains are on the Continental Divide, so there's mountains on both sides of the border. Kananaskis is hugely popular recreational area. That's where I've done a lot of my mountain climbs and mountain summits. Maybe I'll bring you guys out there on a GoPro sometime. You can check out my mountain climbing adventures. But the towns there are very, very sensitive to ecological issues, environmental issues, because of the just the nature of where they are in these sensitive protected areas of the Canadian Rockies. The riding also includes some small rural towns out in the foothills area, which are very conservative. And so this does tend to be a competitive riding. It's a toss-up between those conservative foothill towns and the much more progressive mountain resort towns. There really wasn't any major scandals with this local MLA. That was Miranda Rosen. And she didn't have the big profile star power. So this was a race that was entirely decided by the provincial shift of the vote. So Banff Kananaskis, I knew that it was going to be lost to the NDP, but I also knew that losing it to the NDP didn't mean we were going to lose government for those reasons I just specified. This is an area that, the vote shifts with the provincial average. And its margin is so close, the margin of victory was so close last time that even that little shift was enough to cost the Conservatives that seat. And so I did project that the Conservatives would win a slim majority. They actually won 2 more seats. These are ethnic seats up Calgary North, Calgary Northwest. They have a very high population of immigrant citizens. And so they can be a lot harder to predict what's going to happen in them because the local candidate matters a lot there. These are 2 seats. This especially, Calgary North, was a seat that was stolen. They were not supposed to win that seat, and they just pulled out the upset victory. It always happens once or twice in the election. There's a riding that you thought was going one way, and it just didn't go that way. In any case, that's going to be it for the Alberta breakdown. I don't have anything to show you guys for the Alex Murdaugh. Yeah, let me see if I can find... I'll just leave it on that screen for a moment, and I'll see if I can find the Alex Murdaugh trial. But while I'm doing that, take a chance to thank everyone who's been watching, hanging out with me today. It's been a pleasure, been an honor and a pleasure. I want the actual motion. Where is... I'm on this weird news website. I'm on the other screen right now, which is why I'm looking off to my side. I'll try to... trying to find... Hopefully I don't get like an auto-playing video or something. Yeah, of course. I'm not going to spend too much time derailing the show and to look for it. I'm hoping that I can find. I don't get a subscription to U.S. Westlaw. I only get Canadian Westlaw subscription through my law school. So I'll have to go. I guess I'll have to go to. I should have done this ahead of time. I didn't actually know I was going to talk about the Murdaugh trial ahead of time. If I did, I would have tried to find this document ahead of time. But oh my goodness. No, I don't think I'm going to be able to find it quickly. I'd have to go to that court. I have to figure out which courthouse that trial was held at. I'm sure I could look it up really quick, but I don't want to spend too much time pausing the show for that. So I'll come over to Canley. Come over to Canley. It's law related. Talk about. I'll talk about the Murdaugh trial without a visual aid. I'm not going to switch to full screen on the webcam. There's no point, and I don't see. Well, actually, maybe I can do that. I'll do it in real time. I'll resize myself in real time. This is gonna look weird. Boom. There. Almost center. All right. You can see the law books I keep back here. It's a pocket criminal code. Pocket. Air quote that one. Anyways, yeah, this is like, so this is Canada's, again, if you've watched videos on this channel, I've said this many times, all of Canada's criminal laws, they're at the federal jurisdiction level. So it's one set of laws for all of our provinces. And yeah, these are all of our criminal laws. So, that's... And then my textbooks, which always look nice, right? They make me look smart. But Alex Murdaugh. So this is a trial that I was following on Legal Vice's channel. You can check him out on YouTube, Legal Vices. But this was the case of a lawyer who had been accused of embezzling and fraudulently taking a lot of money from a lot of people. He embezzled through his clients and his law firm, his practice, and yeah, he stole a lot of money from a lot of people. Then his wife and one of his sons gets murdered. And right on the surface, there's motive for a lot of people to do this. And not a lot of reasons why it would make sense for Alex to kill him. In any case, he was convicted at trial. I think the pivotal piece of evidence was that he had claimed that he had not seen his family, or he had not been in a place where they were murdered. He was not down in the area. And then it came out on on the son's cell phone that he was recorded playing with the dog. It was like an Instagram short video. And so they caught him in that lie. And the jury just said, well, you lied about that. You lied about everything else. A lot of the evidence was circumstantial. There was nothing that really proved that Alex was the murderer. He was the shooter. The guns have never been found. And the testimony at trial revealed some weaknesses in the investigation, some issues with how the investigation was conducted, but that is, I guess that's the meat and the potatoes of what happened in that trial. The conviction was, in my opinion, it was weak, but again, I'm only a second-year law student, so what do I know? Of course, to prove the elements of murder, you have to prove that the person committed an act that led to the death. The key is that the act was intentional, the result was intentional. You shot the person and you wanted them to die. Or you were reckless as to whether death would occur, but you were intended to cause harm that was likely to cause death. So, again, that's the elements of proving murder. Motive is not one of those things. Nowhere in that explanation did the word motive come up. Intent is the key word. Motive is evidence of intent, but absence of motive, you can still find intent. And yeah, that this case would have been an example of that, because there never really has been a proper motive. I think the prosecution, the state in the Murdaugh trial, their theory of the motive was that his transgressions were about to be discovered, and that possibly wanted to spare the family the shame, or that, but there's never, like, that explanation isn't very good. And I'm just, I'm not convinced that that's the motive to kill your wife and your son, who, they called a lot of witnesses to testify that the relationship was strong. I mean, you stay married to someone long enough, you're going to have arguments and fights, but they were not separated. They lived together. The relationship Alex had with his wife and his son seemed to be very positive, very good. I find it so hard to believe that, given that as a fact, then a switch flips that night and you kill them. You don't kill yourself. And the only motive is that you're trying to save them in some way. Oh, and Alex Murdaugh has another son. He has 2 sons. And the other one survives. He's still alive. He was at the trial. I think he testified. I forget if he actually testified or not, but yeah, he has another son. So there's gaps, there's holes in the theory, and the standard of beyond all reasonable doubt, you can't be pretty sure that this guy killed them. Beyond all reasonable doubt means you are sure, without qualification. No qualifiers in front of the word, nothing that waters the word down. I am sure this person did the crime that they are accused of. This trial always seemed like a pretty thin, flimsy conviction. But that was obviously the topic of the appeal. The judge made some rulings that the defense disagreed with, so they're appealing those rulings. They believe that it prejudiced the case. It prejudiced the trial against Alex Murdaugh. But then we get to a very interesting development where the county clerk, the clerk of the court, is alleged to have wrongfully interfered with the trial, to have done conduct that, if true, would cause concern to the impartiality and the sanctity of the trial. Court officers are neutral, and that is our adversarial court system. The accused faces their accuser. In this case, it's the state representing the dead victim. Because these crimes offend our sense of morality as a society. Therefore, the state, the power vested within the state, is where they draw that authority to try criminal cases. I represent society, the state. Yeah, I represent the state in as the adversary of the accused. This crime affects all of us as a collective, as a whole. Civil cases would be where an injured party seeks compensation from a wrongdoing, an alleged wrongdoing of a defendant. So in our criminal system, the adversarial court, what I'm getting to is that the judge is neutral. This is our system, and it's a cornerstone of the system. The officers of the court are neutral. So in any allegation, and the specific allegation is that the clerk at one point told the jury something along the lines of, don't believe this guy, or they're going to talk about things, don't be fooled by their interpretation. Because that's how lawyers work. Lawyers will ask questions designed to highlight the strengths of their case. They're going to focus on facts that are important to them. They're going to minimize facts that are not important to them or that harm their case. So the clerk going in and drawing attention to this tactic on one side but not the other is bias. And it's introducing bias to that jury. Now, I'm not familiar with this state's exact rules of procedure. I didn't have a chance or time to research that stuff. So I'm not going to get into the technicalities of the allegations versus, okay, what part of the law was broken. But understand that from this top-down view, it offends your sense of morality that the officer of the court, who's supposed to be neutral, is actively interfering with the jury. The role of the jury is to hear the evidence and make a fact decision. Decide the facts of the case. Who is telling the truth? Who is lying? What evidence is believable? What evidence is unbelievable? The judge instructs the jury on the law, but the jury's role is to be the trier of fact. So when someone tampers with that, they are not approaching. And again, the judge always explains this very clearly. You may only and solely decide this case based on what you heard and seen in court. At the trial. You are, as a juror, not supposed to be influenced from outside sources, right? You're not supposed to watch the news. You're not supposed to do your own research. You're not supposed to talk to people about the case. This allegation, if true, violates all of those things. And that has tampered, that has polluted the jury. And that means that a polluted jury, their verdict cannot stand as a matter of law. So what Alex Murdaugh's defense team is doing is filing a motion to have a new trial because that jury was polluted, that verdict cannot stand based on those allegations. There has been sworn affidavits from a juror who is corroborating some of the allegations that the defense team has against the clerk. I think the reason that a lot of this came out is that the clerk released a book, or is releasing a book, about her experience in the trial. And that caused some people to come forward and say, these this clerk, was a little sketchy. Some of these things happened, and that's where we're at now. Um, there's a motion for a new trial before the court. I reached out to Legal Vices to see if I could possibly participate. I can't. I'm not going to be in a good position to cover this trial by myself. I just know so little about the law in that jurisdiction. Um, and I have no experience as a litigator. I'm a law student. So I would seek. I'll reach out to some people, see if I can get some guests or guests on other streams to sort of help digest what's going on more technically in the legal realm. But that's the update I wanted to share about the Alex Murdaugh trial. I mean, my thoughts on that. The inspiration to go to law school was from the Kyle Rittenhouse trial that Nick Rekieta covered, along with many, many other lawyers. That was really, like, Kyle Rittenhouse was the rise of LawTube, in my opinion. I happened to guest at Nick's house during a part of that trial. I didn't appear on stream, though, because back then I wasn't a lawyer. But I got to sit in on, and this is the first time I had ever seen a trial run this way. So I got to sit in on it and watch. I actually was sitting right beside Nick Rekieta when he got the invite to go on the Glenn Beck show. That was really cool to see. I'm happy for him. And, what his channel has done since then. So, and I know a lot of people watching my content will be familiar with Nick Rekieta, which is why I mention him a lot, which is why I give him so many shout outs. It's just, of course, I look up to Nick. I want to run this channel a similar way to the way he runs his channel. I don't want to talk about dry stuff all the time. I want to have some fun with this. Talk about interesting things that people get them to think, get them to ponder, get them to wonder. I don't know, ponder your orbs, to make an old meme reference. But I where was I going with that train of thought? I do want to cover trials here in Canada where I can share some authority and say, this is what I learned about this law, this is what I learned about this process, and here's what's happening. But I also want to bring the common understanding of the law to the common man. And, common law. That's the type of system we have. And the law has become so wrapped in this enigma that it is so difficult for ordinary people to just grasp how vast and expansive the law is. It's such a huge field. This is why you have to go to school for 3 years, article for a year, get accepted to the bar or the Law Society in Canadian parlance. In order to practice, this stuff is really complicated. This is why that when you are charged with a crime, you really, really should get a lawyer. It's why they say, don't represent yourself. Go get a lawyer. These are the experts. This is their job to know this stuff. I want to bring that expert knowledge or the authoritative knowledge to the common person and bring it to the common understanding. So my hope with this channel is that I get to cover trials and I get to provide commentary on what is going on, what is the process, and provide not legal advice, but general advice, life advice. If you find yourself in this situation, how can you help yourself? Make it easier on yourself. And actually, you'll see that I did a guest collaboration. I had Ian Runkle the Bailey, on as a guest on my channel. We were talking about firearms law, and he is, I consider him to be an expert in this field. He's a fellow Canadian lawyer, a fellow Albertan. And he talked about, um, he had some great insights into, high profile criminal trials that had happened here in Canada. We talked about the Colton Bushy shooting, the Gerald Stanley case, but it wrapped up in the this is how I do it, and you lose the this is how it should be done. But bit of a stream hiccup there. Apologies for that. I'm almost done anyways. We're almost out of here. I'll be wrapping up very soon. But to bring it back to the Alex Murdaugh trial, I don't speak from authority, but what I can do is say, all right, this is the process that's supposed to happen. This is, these are the theories and the philosophy that underpin this trial. And I can draw your attention when there are actions in trial that offend the theory and the philosophy. Kyle Rittenhouse was an excellent example of that. That was borderline abuse of prosecutorial discretion. That case should have never been brought to court. The self-defense claim was so strong, it was so well recorded on video. The verdict was just, it was correct. Based on the law of Wisconsin, those verdicts were correct, in my opinion. My opinion doesn't hold a lot of water, it doesn't mean much, but what I can say was, and I come from the technology background, and so the moments of the trial where they're arguing over this, like, interpolation, zooming into grainy drone footage and video footage, the moment where the prosecution admits that they gave a lower resolution of a key piece of evidence to the defense, and then they try to explain it away with some technological babble. Those are things that really run in my wheelhouse, and I can highlight those, and I can talk about them from an authoritative standpoint. But also, things that offend your sense of the correctness of court, how court is supposed to run, how the jury is supposed to act. Because I'm a law student. I have a book here. It would be funny if I'd knocked all my books over. I have a book here about the theory, right? Criminal law and procedure. Look at the size of this book. It's all about the theory, the way the court is supposed to run. Being a law student gives me a bit of a fresh insight into the evolution of the procedure of law over time, that older lawyers who haven't been to law schools since the 80s, perhaps this is lost on them, right? Our authoritative cases. Now, people who've practiced for a long time are going to know authoritative cases. But and good lawyers will know the philosophical underpinning of that authoritative case, right? Supreme Court rulings, where the Supreme Court was coming from in order to develop the law into what it is today. Good lawyers will know that. But the development of procedure over time, all of the theory that underpins the operation of court and the people in the court, these are things that perhaps they haven't, lawyers with a lot more practice haven't experienced in quite some time. And I think that's where I can differentiate myself, distinguish myself, coming into this as being a current law student. And so I listen to law professors every day lecture on what the law should be. And then a lawyer who's in practice will say, well, this is how it actually works. And both, don't get me wrong, both are valuable if you want to win cases. Yeah, if you want to win cases, what the law is and how it does work, that is what's going to win. That's what's going to win. That's what's going to win your case in front of a judge or a jury. In Canada, we do have a lot of judge-only trials. So, but again, that neutrality is still maintained because the judge is the trier of fact. The jury is supposed to be neutral, but they're not, they're not legal minds. And of course, the judge makes ruling on evidentiary matters and then also decides the facts of the case. So, that was a small aside just to make sure I wasn't given inaccurate information on how our system works. But, um, yeah, the lawyer with 20 years of practice in litigation experience is going to tell you, well, you go to court, you do this thing, and you'll probably win. But the law student is the one who says, in theory, if you go to court and do this thing, you should win. The difference between the practice and the theory is something I want to explore. Something that could be interesting to people. And it's interesting because when you see trials on TV, like in drama shows, right? TV dramas or in the movies, you get a sense of how a trial should run or how a court case will proceed. And reality is not, reality doesn't reflect that entirely. Well, the same thing happens with the course theory. Course theory is going to teach me how a case should run. But then I'll actually get to the courtroom and I'll see shortcuts. I'll see judges making comments on cases that you'd never think they would make in person. Or, sorry, from a theoretical standpoint. I'll give you a good example. I attended court over the summer in Calgary. I was present for a faint hope hearing. Faint hope is a old provision of our criminal code. It was removed in 2011, but the date of your conviction tells you what laws apply to you. And so this, it was a woman convicted of first-degree murder of her ex-husband. She had convinced her current boyfriend to commit the murder and then lured the ex-husband to the location. And so they both got first-degree murder. Her moral culpability is somewhat lower versus the person who pulled the trigger, but not much, right? So she was given parole, and parole ineligibility for first-degree murder in Canada is automatic 25 years. You can depart upwards from that in heinous cases, dangerous offender designations, things like that. But she gets the life in prison, no parole for 25 years. The faint hope clause lets someone convicted under those circumstances apply to have the parole ineligibility reduced. And it's called the faint hope clause for a reason. This is not something that the court just grants willy-nilly. You have to have exceptional circumstances to be granted a lowering, a departure downwards of the parole ineligibility. So I sat in on this trial, and it's a unique trial. It's literally a trial on your sentence. And so they seat a jury. The accused sits in the accused or the prisoner box, as it's sometimes called, because she is obviously serving her life sentence. And the defense and the Crown call witnesses to testify. I sat in on this trial, and at the very end of the procedures on that day, they're going to adjourn for lunch. So the accused is brought out by the court sheriffs. The jury is let out of the room, and it's just the judge, the clerk, the recorder, and the lawyers, and then whoever was in the galley as spectators. And the judge makes a couple of remarks on the record to the defense counsel, speaking about the accused's record in prison, because the witnesses that morning talked about her rehabilitation in prison, the program she participated in, her conduct as a prisoner. And they all had very high, very good reports on her progress. And the judge remarked along the lines of, well, this is the model prisoner, this is the gold standard. These are the kind of things I'd want to see out of someone who's trying to rehabilitate themselves for return back to society. And to hear the judge comment on something like that was surprising. Again, not, that kind of thing wasn't covered in this textbook. And so that's the difference of the practice versus the theory. In theory, the judge shouldn't make any comments about what he's just heard in the court or in the case. Now, there's no, this is not, those are objective statements based on the evidence that he heard, and he's not the jury. The jury wasn't in the room, the accused wasn't in the room, it was just a conversation between the lawyers and the judge. So it didn't tamper or otherwise interfere with the neutrality of the case. So, again, at the technical level, nothing was done wrong. At the theoretical level, though, this is not something judges normally do. But judges are people. Lawyers are people. And people like to talk. I like to talk. As evidence from the last 2 hours. So, anyways, that's the last point I really wanted to address. I thank everyone for hanging out here with me. I'll hang around for a little bit if anyone's got some just AMA. Ask me anything. I'll do an impromptu AMA. I'll hang out for 5 minutes before I kill the stream, but I'll try to put this book back without knocking my other books over. And this hulking textbook is my Canadian constitutional law. So, this is a huge book. And I would say a lot of the case law in this book has to do with Indigenous relations. Unlike the US, we just have so much case law with Indigenous people and treaty rights. It's one thing. I've always compared Indigenous people in Canada, our social issues, our sort of societal interactions with one another to African Americans in the US. We have a lot of the same social problems. We have one that the African Americans don't. We have a huge suicide rate among the Indigenous population. That's just not reflected in the African American population. But the legacy of residential schools, of course, the legacy of slavery in the United States, there's a lot of similarities between the two groups. The difference, though, there was no treaty signed between Great Britain and the slaves of the United States. So the legal precedent that this sits upon goes back hundreds of years to when Canada was a colony of Britain, and Britain, the king, right, the crown of Britain, signed treaties, deals, gave rights to the Indigenous population here in Canada. Those treaties have survived our Confederation. They're still a part of our Constitution. So there is a lot of complex law when it comes to delivering programs and services to the disadvantaged Indigenous people, in the context that a lot of these services and programs are mandated by the treaties and our Constitution. Even our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, there exists an affirmative action clause. We saw this in Texas, and actually, I'll do a separate video on this sometime. But the ruling, I think it was Texas Tech, but it was the ruling of the Supreme Court that overturned a college admissions affirmative action because it's racism. It is deciding an issue solely on the basis of race and coming to some sort of conclusion. In Canada, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms has a clause that allows for the correction of historical wrongs. and that is, nicknamed our affirmative action clause. So, discrimination on the basis of righting a historical wrong, which applies to women, applies to Indigenous people, it applies to African Canadians. Especially on the East Coast, out in Nova Scotia and Halifax area, there is a very sizable population of Black Canadians. Groups that have been disadvantaged by political reasons, racial, gender, they benefit from a unique protection in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And it allows our colleges to have race-based admissions. So, again, the topics for future videos. What's up, Tack? How you doing, man? So I'll put the book back and just... but yeah, that Constitution book is full of case law regarding those historical treaties and their context in our Canadian Constitution. These affirmative action programs, just chock full of it. And that's why that book is so thick. Honestly, I would love, next time I'm in the US, maybe I'll ask Rackets if I can get my hands on a American Constitution law textbook. Because he told me he teaches constitutional law at the high school level for his homeschooling co-op. He's mentioned that on his channel too. I'm not doxing anything that is not already out in public, but he has mentioned that he's done that before, and I wonder if he's got a U.S. constitutional law textbook. I'd love to get my hands on it and read it sometime. I probably could order it from Amazon, but there's so many different textbooks out there, and I would trust that he would know a good textbook, one that presents the American constitutional law in a way that's easy to understand. What I know about American law comes from LawTube. I don't really do a lot of independent reading or studying on that, so I think that's gonna bring this today's session to a close. I'm gonna shrink my webcam down because boy oh boy, that's scary. That's probably not even the same size I started with. I'm gonna work on an overlay for OBS. I don't know if I'm gonna go back to StreamYard or Restream that Ken Jennings uses, or whatever he uses. I have had issues with that before. I am pretty competent with tech and computers, so I trust to be able to make pretty decent. I'm not a graphic artist, though. That's the one weakness in the digital realm that I have. But I think I can make good use of OBS and local audio mixing here at my computer level to enrich the experience a little bit. Especially if I would love to get a rig that's portable. So I've got a laptop sitting beside me right here. I'd love to have a portable streaming rig that, and the laptop's pretty strong. It's one of those, it's a couple years old, but it's a Ultrabook. So it's got pretty good processor, decent speed, SSD hard drive. The graphics leave a lot to desire, but thankfully, online streaming doesn't use a ton of graphical memory. It's mostly processor power that the online streaming encoding uses. So I hope to get a portable rig that I could actually bring out to courthouses. Now, you're not allowed cameras in Canadian courtrooms without prior leave from the judge. I'm not going to make those motions. They would be denied outright. There is no... You have to convince the judge that the benefit to society outweighs the invasion of privacy to the people who testify. Yeah. There's no way I'd ever win that motion. I wouldn't argue it myself. I'd hire a lawyer, but again, I would not make that motion. But what I can do, I do recall Good Logic did this, Joe. he did this during the um that what's her name, the trial of the mistress of, or the wife of Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, why am I forgetting? I don't remember her name. But anyways, um, I remember that federal court, because it was a federal crime, it was a federal trial. Federal court has a no camera policy, and so what Joe did is he would go sit in the trial, take notes, and then come out onto the steps of the courthouse and give commentary from there. Fever Fry, I think, has done something similar, where he'll come out onto the steps or in his car and he'll do some commentary there. I would love to do something similar, but I need to upgrade some equipment here. I don't have a good enough camera that's portable. Well, I guess any webcam is portable, but you know what I mean. This webcam is not made for being on the move. It would fall over a bunch. It'd just be a really horrible experience altogether. Same with lighting. Maybe I get myself a good GoPro like Viva had for the longest time. But that's what I hope to do maybe next year. But again, the path to monetization will allow me to buy these things and bring you better content, better commentary. So, I hope you'll join me in this path to 1,000 subscribers, 400 public watch hours of my content. I have 2 hours here. So if 100 people watch this video, if 200 people watch this video, I would be at the content watch criteria in no time. So, I hope that people will join me. And, oh, hey, Sharon, how are you? How you doing? But yeah, thanks for everyone joining in. I had a pretty good audience here today. I'm very pleasantly surprised and happy. I bet I would have had more people here if I'd given more notice, maybe advertised it a bit more. But, yeah, if you're not subscribed already, I'd really appreciate if you do hit that subscribe button. I hope to be running a circuit, guesting on other channels quite a bit in the future, so that I can promote this channel and start building it up. I will definitely be doing a lot more content. I know this channel was pretty sketchy for content last spring. I just got so busy with law school. My schedule now is much more... I have a lot more free time in blocks during the day where I can sit down and get a video recorded. I don't do a lot of editing on my videos. Again, that's just not something I've done in the past. That is something I would enjoy doing in the future now. Especially working on better thumbnails, because it's just always me with the cool background. Shout out to the guy who did that for me too. That was that cartoon avatar is amazing. I use that for so much stuff now. By the way, if you do want to support the channel, I have an option. Let me see. Whoops. Oh, for stupid autocomplete. Anyways, I did make my own website with a donation function. Yes, it's a WordPress site. It's I've secured it. I've locked it down. I'm gonna upgrade that security too. Now that I've shown everyone that it's where the WordPress login is. But anyways, there actually is a working donation form here. I did this last night. I was hanging out with Cress on Twitch. I didn't guest on her stream. I was just hanging out in the chat. But you guys remember Cress from as a guest on Drexel's show. But yeah, I was just hanging out on her channel. Crumbrion on Twitch if you want to check it out. But yeah, just chatting with her and putting this all together last night. But yeah, this is my super chat function right now, so go for it. I think it works. Oh, it is anonymous. You can do anonymous donations too. Yeah, you can do anonymous. So it only will ask first name and email, and it won't publicly disclose this. If you do not check the anonymous box, there will be a spot on this website where you can go and see. It's kind of like a GoFundMe, very similar to GoFundMe, where you can see who's left donations. Um, and then my credit card processor, it's not done on my server. My credit card processor is Stripe, third party, which works in Canada. I'd use Cash App, but it doesn't work in Canada. So if someone wants to give that a test out, go for it. Be my guest. I haven't seen if my email system is working. It might actually not be working. Anyways, that was that's that. I hope you guys enjoyed. Um, of course, all donations, all comments are appreciated. What I'm going to do is open that up. Oh, Figbat just started streaming. Here, I'll send you guys over to Figbat. Let's see. Let's see how I do that. Go check out Figbat. He has been a guest on Drex's show before. I think he's playing video games. But I should be able to how do I send someone to I've never actually done a raid before, or whatever they called it on YouTube. Hmm. Okay, well, this will either go poorly or it'll go very well. I'm going to attempt to send you guys over to Figbat's channel. You can check him out. I'm going to kill the OBS first, so I will go offline. It'll just show that I'm offline. Then I'll try and send you guys over. I'll end the stream on YouTube proper. And yeah, so I'm going to stop the OBS recording. I should have figured this out before I did this, but who knows? Who cares? Good night, guys. Good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is where you are. Enjoy. We'll see you again next time. Remember,